Huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Reuben Olson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cryptid Clues. I'm your co-host, Reuben Olson, joined by the main host over here, Taylor Field. We've got a fun follow-up for you today based on our previous Dogman episode, but before we dive in, be sure to check us out at CryptidClues.ca, send us an email at cryptidclues@gmail.com, and join our Patreon to get ad-free and exclusive episodes and content and stickers at patreon.com/cryptidclues, where, well, $1 you can get early access and ad-free episodes, or for $5 you can get special stuff and bonus episodes, including those stickers. And finally, you can find us on almost all social media. Thank you to all of our listeners for your support, as last month was our biggest month yet. Taylor, take our listeners away with some dastardly Dogman dissections.
Well, yeah. Heck, we're getting back into the Dogman. You said it. So our last episode we did that focused on this cryptid was very much an introductory. You and me were kind of exploring the basics and everything along those lines with a couple of encountered sightings. And we just kind of scratched the surface. This is a much more in-depth kind of coverage and explanation as to the Dogman cryptid in comparison to what we can hypothetically, I guess, relate to what these mannerisms and how it looks to kind of what we have in terms of real life wolves and coyotes. So this will be much more of a cross-examination.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into more Werewolf Boy stuff here.
Werewolf Boy, yeah. So I ended up looking through a variety of photos of like wounds, sightings, footprints. And so starting at the beginning here, coyote footprints are usually around 2.5 inches in length and often smaller. The common domesticated dog is up to 3 inches in length or less. And then we have wolves coming in at around like 3.5 inches to sometimes 5 inches, with a width of around 3 to 5 inches, depending. So with Dogman, these prints come in at a multitude of sizes, but often the common size that's measured in photos and casts, it seems to clock in a Dogman footprint at around 9 inches in length. And
oh my goodness. How big were the wolf ones again?
the wolf ones were about 3.5 to sometimes 5 inches, with a width of 3 to 5, depending on that length.
So the Dogman one, essentially, if we go for some of the biggest stuff there, is essentially double that of a wolf's.
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty heckin' huge.
I'm just going to pop this photo up here just so obviously the listeners can't see it, but just to kind of help you kind of gauge this a little bit.
You're left out.
You're left out. You honestly go on Google, you can type in like a coyote, large dog, gray wolf footprints, and you can see. So here it is, though, Reuben, the general length of these footprints in comparison to each other. So they definitely vary, and you can picture that Dogman doubled in size compared to the gray wolf.
Yeah, we get lots of coyotes out here on the farm, and they're tiny. Like, their little footprints and stuff are just basically the size of a house pet. Gray wolves, we don't have that out here, but those, I imagine, are much, much larger. Especially this picture you're showing me, the footprints are probably about 3 to 4 times the size of a coyote. And for a Dogman to be double the size of, like, a wolf, that's a pretty big footprint.
Very, very big footprint. I also should note, when I say a domesticated dog, I mean like your German Shepherd is the baseline throughout this episode. I'm not talking Chihuahua or anything.
Your
tiny
domesticated
like
Chihuahua.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have anything on the footprints in general for Dogman?
I mean, for Dogman specific footprints, something to note that's pretty interesting about them is while we have plenty of Bigfoot tracks and tracks of some other cryptids and stuff, Dogman tracks are a very rare sight. Plenty of reports that really mention footprints also kind of follow a trend I've noticed where the footprints kind of just disappear into nowhere. As if Dogman appeared in the middle of a field, walked away for a little while, and then just was whisked away. Any other footprints, I mean, of course, could easily be missed or misattributed to wolves and stuff out in the woods, but it's interesting to note how easy and strange it is to see like a barefoot human print and then go, oh, this shouldn't be out in the woods. Is this like a Bigfoot or something? But imagine seeing a Dogman's footprints out in the woods. You're probably just going to walk right by it. You're going to maybe glance at it and go, oh, that's a big dog. For actual Dogman sightings, the footprints that they've like seen and stuff, there's a few reports where a Dogman maybe like quickly walks through a field or somebody sees like a Dogman bouncing around outside. When they go and inspect it, the footprints that they find tend to lead them to the middle of nowhere, 10, 12 feet or whatever, and then just disappear. Any follow-up investigations and stuff like that, they try to go beyond the tracks, they can't find anything. It's like the Dogman just kind of appeared in the middle of nowhere, bounced around for a bit, and then disappeared, which is super, super strange. Linda Godfrey has quite a few of these encounters recorded in her books like this, where giant wolf-like tracks are discovered and lead into nothing. So it's very interesting to kind of bring Dogman footprints into perspective here, where, yeah, they're like twice the size of everything else, but we have so few of them, and the ones that we do have mostly tend to lead to more questions.
That's interesting how they disappear. That just reminds me of another famous cryptid out there when you think about it. And if someone is out staging these footprints and just making fake trails going along, where are the parallel footprints of theirs? Are they just wearing these boots and doing like the Shining style where they walk a certain distance in the snow and then they just walk back in their footprints out of there? I feel like it would not be as easy as it would seem to do something like that wearing dog printed boots.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I think a lot of investigators look for, is if the footprints they're going to investigate actually have human footprints around them. Now, most sightings and reports, if you saw a Dogman out in your field, you're going to go inspect it before you call an investigator. You're going to be walking out there looking at the footprints yourself and kind of destroying some of that evidence by putting your footprints right next to the Dogman prints, which also isn't really going to help your story and prevent any possibility of like a hoax, right? So it's probably a common issue when you're investigating this kind of thing to go out there and find fresh Dogman tracks with nobody's tracks around them.
Yeah, absolutely. There was something I want to mention here, and again, by no means am I a hunter or a tracker. Going back to the length, so dogs and wolves have that prominent pad where they plant their paw down, and with Dogman, more often than not, you can see this prolonged, and I don't want to say pad, but more like a foot impression. And I also want to attribute this to the weight of these impressions. So wolves and dogs, their paw impressions show a fair, I would say, distribution of weight throughout this impression, even with coyotes. And with Dogman, the impressions always, to at least, again, this is in my perspective and analysis, and I'm not an expert at all. The impression just seems much deeper, which I would say obviously attributes to the fact that they weigh a lot more than a dog and a wolf and all that, but the weight seems more prominent in the front. And again, that's inconclusive and varies from print to print, but the reason I suspect that there's more weight in the front would stem from that more elongated standard wolf dog like hind leg, if you know what I mean. If you're thinking of your classic werewolf in a movie, or let's just say look at a cat and look at a dog, look at their hind legs, and you see how they are kind of bent to the opposite way of a standard human leg, right? And it's just there's more weight put on the front of the foot, while their heels are elongated and coming up off the ground.
That's called the hock. So their hind limb there behind their like back feet, that kind of angled backwards thing, the opposite of a human knee, that's called the hock. So canines and dogs have a hock, not like a bird. H-O-C-K is what I'm saying here. If that's what you're referring to, is the hock of the leg.
Yeah.
And then it has that elongated part at the bottom and then the pad.
Yes, that is it. Interesting term. I didn't know that. Whenever I was looking, it's just like the hind legs. Like there's got to be a specific term for this aside from the hind legs, but the hock, that's interesting. Well, yes. So I just find that fascinating and again, very terrifying, but it goes hand in hand with majority of Hollywood werewolf films. You see them with that standard type of look, and I'll point to Exhibit A, Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban. You can see Professor Loomis. There's a example of the hawk in his legs. So That's kind of something that I would imagine. But again, that's more werewolf, and that's completely fantasy.
Yeah. It's interesting to note that the Harry Potter werewolf, the professor there, is pretty much on par with what witnesses describe for Dogman sightings too. Like it's very, very close. He's a little bit more timid looking in the movie there, but that's the general concept of Dogman right there.
Yeah, and the size is, again, we were getting more into the weight. So these creatures, they seem to clock in usually at around 8 to 9 feet tall. Again, using German Shepherds as an example, they can come in at around 2 to 3 feet tall, and a wolf can clock in at around 4 feet tall. So just like the prince, in terms of height, these cryptids are almost double the size in many aspects. And that size, again, adds credit to the print measurements as well when we're looking at the overall bigger picture of what these things range from in terms of weight and size and all that stuff.
Yeah, as rare as those prints are, I guess you could say it's a limited print.
Yes, you very well could. But yeah, the clocking at like 8 to 9 feet tall, that's huge. But again, that's kind of cutting it close to Bigfoot size. I could see where people get a little bit confused even in some sightings where, hey, I'm thinking I'm looking at a Dogman, and you maybe can't see the body of this thing. You only see the head. And I imagine the head at nighttime playing with shadows, you could mistake a bear for that, because if a bear stands up on its hind legs, and I have seen videos of bears walking on their hind legs, it's quite terrifying, and you could definitely misidentify. I'm not accusing anyone of misidentifying. I'm just I'm playing devil's advocate for a moment of putting out a alternative possibility there, because you just don't know.
I mean, like lots of animals, dogs and bears included, are known to walk on their 2 little feet if they're injured or if they're looking around for something that's higher than they can see. Bears are very well known for walking on their 2 feet. They'll stand up and go bipedal for a little bit. An injured bear, if it's got an injured front paw, will just choose to walk on its back feet while the front paw is healing. However, they definitely waddle and look pretty cute when they do it, depending on the bear. Some species of bear are a little bit terrifying. There's quite a few videos you can see where they're just walking around by a bus or something like that. And I would maybe attribute a bear walking as a misidentification for like a Bigfoot sighting or vice versa.
More so than a Dogman.
Yeah, definitely some situations where maybe you think you see a Bigfoot in the woods. Well, it could have been a bear standing up. Maybe you see an ad break coming your way. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh
Sorry about the ad break there.
God.
I love being spicy with them. Unless you're a Patreon subscriber for $1, you don't have to suffer like you just did. Or on some platforms, the ads get a little bit misaligned, and then you just end up getting away scot-free with it. But
you got me good. Holy shit. I totally fell for it again.
You always fall for it. That's my favorite thing to do. So back to the topic of bears standing up, because I think it's definitely something that gets associated with misidentification for Bigfoot a lot. It could kind of go either way. But that being said, it just doesn't happen too often. I don't think you're just going to see a bear watching you standing up from behind a bunch of shrubbery and not really making a sound or something like that. Like, you're going to know it's a bear, right? Mm-hmm. Bigfoot's going to be a lot stealthier and silent. But Dogman, which is what we're really talking about today, misidentifying a bear standing up? Definitely not. No. I think you're more than likely to see an injured wolf or canine choosing to walk on its back legs because its front paws are injured. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be pretty unsettling. Even goats will walk on their back 2 legs and like mimic a human for a bit if they see a walk around enough. They can be pretty creepy. A canine, you could definitely see maybe like a wolf or something. But again, that's going to be a pretty rare occurrence, and they don't walk very fluidly. It's still going to be a little bit of a waddle. It's very awkward. They're not used to doing that. Dogman sightings, though, will generally lead towards this gigantic hulking werewolf sprinting on 2 feet, totally walking like hunched over, all movie style and everything, football tackling something. Like, they're terrifying. It's not a canine with an injured front leg. No. Sorry, Taylor, do you have anything to add to that? I'm just kind of rambling here about tackling werewolves.
I think it's fascinating, and you make a couple of good points there. I was just going to defer back to the anatomy of it, the physique, and its weight generally. So Dogs usually come in at around like 66 to 88 pounds. That's what I found again for your standard German Shepherd, right? And wolves can come in as much as 120 pounds. And
Which still isn't much when you think about it. That's like a very small, skinny person.
exactly, it is pretty small. I believe in the 1990s, they actually had a wolf that was killed and weighed in at about 150 pounds. But the official record on file for a timber wolf was weighing in about 175 pounds. So that's getting to be the higher end, but still standard size of an average human probably comes in at about 160 to 200 pounds, right? And a muscular person, well over 200 pounds.
I'm about 155.
155, I'm about the same too. Weight is not often recorded, however, when people are killing wolves. So I imagine some wolves actually clearing 200 pounds is very likely out in the wild. And I'm talking the deep woods, right? So.
And where do you think Dogman lies with weight there?
Well, it's funny you mention that because the estimated assumption for weight of a dogman is around 550 pounds. And this stems from witness reports, again, estimating at least around 500 pounds in its weight. This, again, would double down the factor and reaffirm the factor of it being doubled in size compared to your average wolf and size of prints, height, and now we're talking weight. Again, a little bit more than double the amount in weight. And I would attribute that to its physique and it just being more well built up in the upper portion of its body, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're typically described as being almost like Bigfoot size in height, right? Like a big old wild wolf, if you were to stand it up on its back 2 feet and stretch it out, probably be about as tall as an average human being. Dogmen, though, are just described as being so much larger. And then the only really big thing, if they can see it peeking out from behind a bush, is the big dog head that differentiates it from like a Bigfoot sighting.
That's usually the thing that gives away too, is people usually catch on to is always the face and the head first. I've noticed in many people's accounts, and they think, oh, that's a very big wolf. And then it stands up on its hind legs like, okay, this is something very different. When this cryptid, however, is on all fours, the reports come in that its height drops to around 4.5 feet tall. So again, your standard wolf is around this height. Now you're looking at something like this, you're like, okay, this looks like a very big wolf. You're not going to necessarily see the backside of it very well if it's at night, if it's in a deep, thick shrubbery or thicket, for example. And the only thing you're going to have that really is going to give it away is probably its difference in its facial expressions, or how it looks in its face and its shoulders, right?
Well, that's something that's described about its face too, is when people get watched by this thing or they encounter it, a lot of reports describe the smile of a dogman, you know? Mm-hmm. They have a very certain creepy appearance to them where it looks like they're smiling at you, you know? They've got their teeth showing a little bit, looks like they're messing with you. They're just downright terrifying looking, like, honestly. If you look at pictures of Dogman, some of the pictures are quite unsettling.
Well, yeah, their teeth are supposed to, from reports, show even when their mouth is closed. Their teeth are still exposed. Well, unlike a lot of canines, you know, their mouth is closed, their teeth do not show at all. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit as to how wolves hunt, and this is associated, again, hypothetically, I'm using it as an example for how we might anticipate a dogman could essentially hunt. So do you have anything else you want to add before I get into the hunting of wolves?
No, we kind of mentioned them running on all fours. We'll get back to that later. I think I've got some interesting things to bring up.
Yeah, okay. So again, by looking at wolves, we know that they target the weakest links, the young, the old, and the sick. And this level of intelligence, again, is fascinating because they can discern a situation. They can balance the odds, basically, of when to attack. And I dare say the repercussions of failing an attack. That last one I would highly attribute to Dogman, mostly in regards to the understanding that, like Bigfoot possibly, hey, if I kill this human here, more will come. But again, looking at wolves, we can see their attacks often involve bites into the shoulders, throat, and face, specifically the nose area. Now, looking at countless imagery of dogman attacks, or supposed Dogman attacks. You can see many farm dogs, all with significant wounds to their neck areas, top of the head, skin piercings as well, that include the ears and even on their forearms, basically. So I'm curious what you think about that.
That sounds pretty predatory. I mean, a lot of things, like even cougars and stuff, they'll go for the throat if they're going to attack you. Dogman attacks here. I'm just looking online and I can't find a whole lot, like on Google Images. Probably there's some stuff that's gross and they just don't want it being on display here.
With this level of intelligence, I that's where I think, okay, this is something that is a clear sign of adaptation, evolution, however you want to call it. So a little bit of insight here with North America. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, actually, just going back to the whole Bigfoot thing there too, you mentioned, like, oh, if I attack this human, more will come. It could very well be attributed to, I don't know if you want to get into any of those topics where, like, Bigfoot are being hunted or something like that, or maybe they're afraid of us for those reasons. Could also just be that, well, they're peaceful and don't really want to hurt us more often than not. Dogmen, though, I feel like that would be something that will be more likely to attack a human than a Bigfoot would, for sure.
I would tend to agree.
Predatory tactics, for sure, chomping at, like, the neck or the face. If a Bigfoot was to attack, or any other large creature like that, it could just pick you up and snap you in half like a twig. Dogman, though, as big and strong as it is, it's got sharp claws, it's got some sharp teeth, it's probably going to do damage like that.
Yeah, definitely. There have only been about 21 fatal wild wolf attacks, I believe, ever recorded, with one being rabid. I mean, I don't know how old
this... That's very small.
Yeah, this might be a very, very old statistic, but I was trying to find one, and this is the most latest one that I was able to populate. There's an estimated 60 to 70,000 wolves in North America, which again is actually pretty small of a number as well, but that includes up to 11,000 in Alaska
I'd be
alone.
interested in finding out if the statistic there of like 21 attacks for wolves are actually true, because if that's the case, I wonder how many reports there are of dogman attacks in comparison, if that's more than wolf attacks or somewhere around the same.
Fatal wild wolf attacks. So it does make me wonder. I would imagine, like, if you happen to find something there, like, definitely please share it. This is just something that I had found. In comparison to dogman attacks, I believe encounters clearly outnumber that. This is, again, where people resulted in dying, and I could see it being legitimate because on the news, I don't hear of wolves killing anyone really, like, ever. It's even cougar attacks, which are exceedingly rare. It's usually met with people always surviving these attacks and the cougar being fought off in time and everything. So to have a wild wolf come in and attack is definitely a rare occurrence. Coyotes have been known in our city as well, like even at Knox Mountain. There's been people that have reported coyotes kind of stalking and coming after, but nothing enough to kill anyone.
Yeah, I did find some extra statistics here. It's actually interesting to know it is a very low number for modern wolf attacks. If we go back historically, extensive historical records in France, there's about 7,600 fatal attacks that were documented from 1200 to 1920. As soon as you reach the 1900s there, after 1920, it just drops right off. Wolf attacks are extremely rare. In
Weird.
modern times in the 20th century, it wasn't until like 2002 that we started to see some fatal attacks, of which there were 8.
That's very, very peculiar.
Right? Like, you'd think it would take I think there'd be a few more than that. But there's also like 3 in North America and a few others, which I think adds up to about 21 or so. So I think your number is right. Beyond that, I think we'll find out more after an ad break. Oh, welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that fatal attack with an ad break there. We were just talking about fatal attacks for wolves, but I can't find anything else.
So, yeah, that was all that I had really found as well.
It's interesting, too, that the number I'm spouting here is including provoked and unprovoked and rabid and non-rabid and all that stuff. Like, this is all the numbers together. So the numbers just get even smaller when you get into provoked and unprovoked and stuff like that.
Okay, I see. Looking I just want to touch more upon their intelligence again. So, wolves being obviously highly intelligent animals, this is interesting that they actually exhibit traits of educating their young, caring for injured, and residing in close family groups. So wolves, again, like I said, they know how to pick the moments, like I mentioned. They also have a prominent hierarchical culture, like alphas, betas, and gammas. Again, in that order, if the alphas go down, the betas are in control, and beta goes down, then the gammas are in control. And these different categories of ranks, they have different traits, I guess you could say, or physical benefits as well, like some being the biggest and the strongest, others being much more quicker and agile. Such intelligence has allowed the species, again, to continue to survive in the wild. Otherwise, it's speculated that the wolf breeds would have possibly died out ages ago. So this is the result of a shrinking environment, which requires a species to either, die out or grow in intelligence to evade, adapt, and coexist in an ever-expanding human society. But that doesn't disregard just how large the wild north really is. It's still a massive landscape. So if we're looking at these things being in a Dogman scenario, who's to say they aren't caring for their young? They're obviously teaching, they're showing their young things, and they know how to evade. Wolves are very elusive things. They're not always like coyotes where they're out in the open and just won't shut up at times when you're trying to sleep.
Yeah, I definitely hear lots of coyotes out here. They're so annoying.
So I'm curious what you think about that level of intelligence and maybe like how that factors into younger dogmen.
I mean, my opinion on Dogman definitely leans a little more towards like the paranormal alien side of it, where they're going to be more intelligent. Lots of reports have some weird things in them, like mind speak, the disappearing stuff, whether you're talking about something totally off the wall like portals or quantum realms or different dimensions. I don't think Dogman's really a natural animal, so I'm more inclined to believe it is intelligent. Now, whether they're raising their young here in a physical world, do we go back towards the kind of the topic we talked about with Ron, actually, about Bigfoot in the quantum realm, them needing to be in like a physical realm to raise young or something like that? Perhaps Dogman does the same. That would explain maybe why they're popping in and out of our reality, which is such a weird phrase to say. Mm-hmm. But when you think about Dogman reports, I don't know if there's ever been a report, at least that I've found, that includes young in it. You get reports with Bigfoot with young, but Dogman's almost always like a single horrific werewolf encounter. There's maybe a couple where you get two, and usually they're like attacking somebody or chasing a car.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I'd be curious to hear that.
They are more animalistic in nature too, so if they had like a young or something, they'd probably like hide it in a bush. You'd never know.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you're dealing with wolves, how often do you see the wolf cub, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's exceptionally elusive. So to see a young dog man, yeah, you're probably right. Hide in the bush or stay way back. I'm going to go scare the shit out of these people and come back and get you, and then we're bouncing.
And if that's something they need to do to raise young, well, that would explain their physical presence. But if not, maybe they're all just elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Whether that's a different reality, which is, again, strange to say, or something else is going on, and they just pop in and out of our physical existence, like some kind of Matrix thing.
Well, you don't really hear about female, I guess, dog women sightings, do you? It's usually just a standard looking dog man. And
well, you wouldn't be able to tell unless you're paying attention. Like, there's not much to see for.
But if you get a look at the underside, and again, like this is getting a little bit of graphic kind of discussion, but wouldn't that give away any kind of?
Maybe. But when you're out in the street and someone's walking their German Shepherd, you glance at it, are you going to be able to tell if it's a male or a female?
On all fours, definitely not. But if it's standing upright.
Who's to say Dogman has parts like that, though?
That's very true. I mean, they could have a completely different physical, thing. I mean, heck, they could even produce asexually for all we know. We just don't know, right?
Maybe they split like bacteria.
Yeah, that's how they expand themselves in their civilization. But yeah, I mean, you make a good point. We really just don't know. But it's fascinating how it is limited just to the one. But yeah, who knows really? Where am I at my notes here? Aha, I found it. So I believe you'll have something on this as well. This cryptid, I found it to be kind of examined in three prominent paths, kind of similar to Bigfoot and how we mentioned that last Bigfoot episode that we had. So you have extraterrestrial, paranormal, or scientifically evolved, kind of a branch of a prehistoric ancestor of sorts. And I'm curious what you have on that.
I mean, kind of diving into that, if you want me to take over that topic, I would say on the scientific realm of things, if we're thinking that Dogman's a natural animal, then it has to be a subspecies or branch off of some other canine entity, something that either was created or evolved to become more human-like over time or through some kind of interference, whether that's like a Nephilim type deal or not. You could still let that be a natural scientific occurrence, depends on how you want to look at it. They would have to hide out very deep in the woods, very infrequently come into contact with humans, which is why there's so few reports. We just don't know much about them to really come to a conclusion there. If we want to explain some things away with magic and stuff, well, of course, then there's the paranormal or the extraterrestrial. Paranormal and the extraterrestrials, where I was saying I lean towards the Dogman topic. But paranormal stuff, you have lots of comments on, I think there's orbs and stuff associated with Dogman sightings, am I correct?
Yeah, definitely.
And they're frequently seen around graveyards as well, is that correct?
Definitely.
Yeah, so the straight paranormal side of it, I mean, werewolves through and through, it's always been associated with that kind of thing, but with reports of them near graveyards, orb sightings and things like that, whether you're looking at spirit, ghost type orbs, or maybe even quantum realm stuff with orbs, that could explain why Dogman just tends to disappear. Same with the extraterrestrial side of it too. If they were maybe a race of experimental creatures or something that was dropped off on our planet, they have some abilities we don't know of to shift in and out of reality, turn invisible, or do whatever. That would be another explanation, especially because, going back to the orb thing, not only are they sighted frequently with orbs, but also UFOs. Mm-hmm. A lot of Dogman reports follow up with, well, I saw an orb in the woods. There was a light flashing around. I had an encounter with a Dogman. Same kind of reports will say that, and also say I saw some strange lights in the sky. There was a triangular-shaped craft that flew by. All this crazy stuff was happening, and then I saw a werewolf. It was totally unexpected when I was expecting to see an alien.
Yeah.
Who's to say, well, maybe they are alien. Maybe they're not. Who knows? I think there's so many things that could just be popping in and out of our reality in some fashion. We don't fully understand it, and whether it can be explained by science or we have to marry the spiritual with the scientific realm to figure things out for real, who knows? There's so many possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have anything you wanted to add to that topic before I go into a totally random Dogman fact?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of even closing in on my notes before we get to your fact here. But yeah, like I basically would back a lot of the things that you had said. Scientifically, I had found someone diving into the discussion of a Dinocrocuta gigantea, which is a giant saber-tooth-like hyena-looking thing that existed in Asia and Africa over 5 million years ago. I pulled up skull photos of this thing, and it has a very eerie resemblance to what you could probably attribute to being a Dogman skull, at least in holding similarities. Again, there's no concrete evidence to support any evolutionary history from anything prehistoric to Dogman, but that doesn't fully discredit that possibility. Looking at the paranormal aspect, for some reason, just like you said, people keep seeing them in graveyards and cemeteries. Really, really weird. And then that segues into the orbs and lights floating around Dogman sightings. I've been speaking to a gentleman recently who had several orbs floating around after seeing this full form Dogman. And then lastly, of course, extraterrestrial. So I'm gonna take a giant step backwards here in history and hone in on Anubis, god of the dead, represented as a jackal, of course, or a man with the head of a jackal. But it's funny how that can coincide a little bit with Dogman sightings at graveyards and cemeteries. God of the dead and all that. Again, like we've discussed on previous Bigfoot episodes or whatever, I like to attribute gods as aliens, just that kind of dynamic. The two seem to intertwine very well in many stories and with Egyptian gods.
Especially if we're talking about Stargate.
Especially if we're talking about Stargate. Oh yeah, I've been rewatching Stargate lately, actually too. I got Madison into it a little bit. Yeah,
Oh, that's
we're on
awesome.
the first season.
Nice.
So,
It's
yeah,
very good indeed.
It's so good. It's so good. I love that show. With Egyptian gods, though, it's my own personal perspective where I attribute them to being like aliens. Dogman themselves can easily be discredited as having any association to Anubis in Egypt. That it's not concrete whatsoever. They could easily just be an advanced species, either piloting these things or just being dropped off by these things. We just don't know.
I can't picture a Dogman flying a spacecraft. Like, that's some Wile E. Coyote Acme tier stuff there.
Wile E. Coyote. Yeah, you're kind of right, aren't you? That's all I got on that. I had like
Cool. All right.
tiny couple things, but I mean, take it away. Okay, take us on your wild goose chase.
Strange fact about Dogman for people that haven't read into a lot of reports and sightings and encounters. A very common element to Dogman encounters when they shift from going bipedal to running on all fours or vice versa. And Taylor, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. You might have seen some notes on it recently. When a Dogman goes from standing on all fours to standing up, if a witness is in audible range, it is extremely common for them to report hearing a knuckle-popping cracking sound when they stand up on two legs.
Really?
Like a sickening bone-popping sound, as if the sockets are shifting into a different form. So,
Are you attributing this to it have being like a human at one point, or just the unnatural physique of
just
this
the
thing?
unnatural physique, just like a snake unhinges its jaws and certain species of animals can shift and change in appearance. It would seem as though the knuckle cracking and popping sound associated with the Dogman literally just standing up or going back down to all fours is as if they have some kind of double-socketed hips to accommodate them running in wolf mode and pop into position for bipedal mode.
That makes a lot of sense, honestly, when you think about it.
And it's not like releasing gases or anything when you're cracking and popping a joint. More like that's just the way that it could be physically made to shift into that different position, so that unlike when a dog stands up and walks on its hind legs because its front paw is injured and it has to waddle, well, you want to get rid of that waddle, you want to have it in a more comfortable natural position. Those double-socketed hip joints, if that theory is correct, would be something where those bones could just slide into place in that position and give the creature that sustainability and comfort to move fluidly.
So it's an evolutionary trait that has hit this thing and given it the ability to, I guess, transform between these two stages.
I would liken it in the most explainable way to being like how a snake can just unhinge its jaws. It's a very unnatural looking thing, but it's something that could easily be explained naturally. And the fact is that this is a common trait in sightings and encounters. An audible knuckle popping sound.
That is fascinating, and that's really freaky. But it
Isn't
makes
it?
total sense, though. I mean, if we were to drop down to all fours right now, it's so awkward, and we can't run on all fours as humans, but we can run really well on, bipedal stance. And then
Yep.
you said
Now imagine if you could get down on the ground in ring form like the Japanese horror ghost lady coming out of a TV and just skitter around like a spider. If your joints popped into position there so that you didn't get sore, oh, that's disgusting. But what I really want you to do is picture you're walking through the woods in the middle of the night. It's quiet. All of the bugs and chirping and crickets just go right away. On both sides of you is a canopy of trees. And instead of hearing a rustling sound or anything else, all you hear is a sickening knuckle popping sound as something cracks into position.
I'm gonna think, oh God, Reuben's out in these woods trying to scare me. No, I'm gonna book it. I'm gonna run for my life. What else are you gonna do?
I think I'm going to leave you with that horrifying mental image, Taylor.
Oh, thank you.
So we dived right into Dogman a little bit more, talked about some details on wolves and coyotes, some interesting Dogman facts and stuff. I feel like there's so much to unwrap here. There's definitely more in the future, and I'm excited to start getting into maybe some Dogman encounters and stuff later.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be getting into it. Like we didn't touch upon it in this episode because we'll touch upon it later on, but we've been corresponding with some people online that had a few encounters, and we've been listening to supposed audio clips as well that are related to Dogman, sounds that they're making out in the woods. So you said it, there's a whole vast archive of information that we need to tap into and we need to learn. So again, I'm hoping that this episode has been a great, stable continuation from our introductory and providing a little bit more comparison and a hypothetical bridge as to what we could maybe attribute to being traits and kind of appearance and mannerisms to what Dogman might be. Again, it's only our hypothetical perspectives. This isn't science.
Well, with that, I believe it's time to close this episode out, everybody. So thank you for listening to another episode of Cryptid Clues. Again, be sure to check us out on our website. Send us an email at cryptidclues@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of these episodes. Obviously, if you've made it this far, you're enjoying something, or you're laughing at us enough to continue listening. Let us know what we could do better. What do you want to see us improve on? What do you like? Let us know where to go. You can also help us out and support us on patreon.com/cryptidclues. Again, for $1, you get early access and ad-free episodes. $5, you can get some special stuff and bonus episodes too. There's lots of ways you can help support us just by listening to us as well and sharing the love. So spread us around on social media. Tell your friends to give us a shot. They can laugh at us too or enjoy us if they want to. Taylor, is there anything you'd like to say?
You can laugh at us all you like. Yeah, no, I got nothing. I just thanks again for joining me, Reuben. This is a good episode.
Alrighty. To everyone listening, have a wonderful night and bye-bye.